the head of the Trump organization, Eric Trump himself. Why do you think that under Obama and Biden, Crimea was annexed in 2014? Why do you think during the 4 years your dad's president, there was no aggressive territorial ambition fulfilled by Putin or any other hostile actor? And then why do you think under Joe Biden, here we go all over again?
Well, Sean, look at the signals that this guy sends. And it's so blatant when you actually watch the show. Look at that picture of him on the bike, right? I mean, here you have Biden riding this beach cruiser. It's got this big kind of, ridiculous reflector on the front of it. I mean, it may as well have had a little horn on there. And he's riding slowly. He's probably going to go get ice cream, right? Literally in a world where, you almost have World War III, everything that you guys have been talking about on the show up to this point, but all the problems here domestically, and the guy's literally riding a beach cruiser around the place, right? I mean, my father would be giving speeches in front of F-35s talking about how he's building the greatest military the world has ever seen. He'd be out there lobbying for, defense funding so he could rebuild the military. He'd be talking about rebuilding the nuclear arsenals. He'd be taking out, Soleimani and all these, bad guys around the world. Believe me, that was sending a true message of strength. And by the way, he was doing it with conviction, and he was doing it with energy, and he was doing it with passion, and he was doing it with strength, which is what you would expect from an American president. When you see a guy riding a beach cruiser in the middle of the day, this is the commander-in-chief of the United States of America. I mean, what message does that send the world that is literally in the middle of, horribleness?
When your father was on the show, I had confirmed through other sources that your dad, before he ever talked about a deal with the Taliban, he said to them in no uncertain terms, if you don't follow every dotted I, cross T, comma, and period, I will obliterate you, and then message the head of the Taliban that he knew exactly where he was during that conversation. I asked him, did you say something similar to Vladimir Putin? He said, I absolutely did. And knowing your dad, as long as I've known him, he's never not told me the truth on issues like this or any other issue. I would argue that probably the message was sent to Putin, I'm not going to take your crap.
Because, Sean, you know what the head of the Taliban respects? Strength, toughness. You know what the head of North Korea, respects? Toughness. What do you think Vladimir Putin, who ran the KGB, respects? A guy on a beach cruiser, on a Saturday in Delaware? That's not what he respects. He respected a president who stood in front of the greatest warplanes ever created, which he was ordering by the hundreds. He respects a guy who's sending Javelin missiles to the Ukraine by the thousands. He respects a guy who has strength and energy. And again, we're not seeing that from this administration. I mean, they're never present, Sean. We've talked about this 100 times, you and I, right? Pete Buttigieg is on paternity leave, and Kamala Harris is, she's a joke when she goes overseas. There's a little country called the Ukraine, and it happens to be next to a big country called Russia.
Oh, my God. That
give
was
me a
humiliating.
break. This isn't American leadership. This isn't what we need. You need a president who works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and actually embodies the toughness of this country. That's what the job is.
All right, Eric Trump, always great to have you. Thank you. When we come back, we'll go to Ukraine. Greg Palcott will join us live with the very latest as air raid sirens are blaring at this hour. Also, Kamala Harris made some head-scratching remarks earlier today. We'll let you see if you can decipher them. This as more of her staffers keep quitting. Newt Gingrich weighs in on this and more as we continue straight ahead.
One of many signs of bravery and solidarity that we witness here and across the country just about every day. It's remarkable stuff, Sean. Back to you.
All right, Greg Palcott, stay safe. Great reporting as always. Thank you. Now, earlier today, another batch of rambling remarks from Vice President Harris talking about the, quote, passage of time during a speech in Louisiana. Sure, this will keep you riveted. Take a look.
The governor and I, and we were all doing a tour of the library here and talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs. And there is such great significance to the passage of time when we think about a day in the life of our children.
The passage of time. Ukraine is a country in Europe, and it's next to a bigger country called Russia. and Russia invaded Ukraine, the smaller country. Meanwhile, we are also learning the vice president's office just took their 10th staffer that they lost since June. This time, the national security advisor, fueling much more speculation about internal strife and the inability of staff to work with her. Also today on Capitol Hill, confirmation hearings kicked off for Biden's Supreme Court nominee, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, where she testified in front of the Senate, saying her judicial role will be constrained by careful adherence to precedent, despite her record suggesting otherwise. Now, Republicans appear poised to focus on Judge Jackson's record and her judicial philosophy instead of the smear tactics and the circus that Democrats orchestrated against Justice Kavanaugh back in 2018. With reaction to all of this, Fox News Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. So we got Joe, the cognitive mess as president. We got Kamala Harris. It's kind of a disaster unfolding every day, and not far behind them is her own struggling cognitive mess that is Nancy Pelosi. So I don't really have a lot of confidence in the government right now, Mr. Speaker, but maybe I'm wrong. You help me out.
Well, first of all, if you want a strong reason to pray for the health of the President of the United States, you are reminded again today that that reason is the Vice President. She's not only totally incoherent, he may or may not have cognitive decline problems at his age, but at her age, she's just dumb. I mean, let's be clear. Kamala Harris may be the dumbest person ever elected Vice President in American history, and that's why people keep resigning. I mean, if you were her national security advisor and you were competent and you'd worked hard and you knew what you were doing and you watched her in Poland break up laughing when she's asked about Ukrainian refugees, you had to feel a sense of total humiliation. So I'm not surprised that that particular advisor resigned, because it's very clear that Kamala Harris should never, ever be allowed to leave the country. She probably shouldn't be allowed to leave the Naval Observatory, which is the residence of the Vice President. She is a constant danger to herself and to the rest of us.
I don't have confidence in either of them. Looking at the situation as it's unfolding in Ukraine. Now, I talked about the Reagan doctrine, I talked about the Trump doctrine, and I've talked about politicians that get us into endless wars. They start out gung-ho. They don't fight them to win the wars. They politicize the wars, and then they pull out our troops, like in Afghanistan, after how many thousands of Americans are dead and how many thousands of other Americans have incredible injuries. We can't do this anymore, Mr. Speaker, can we?
Well, look, I think there are things we can do, exactly as you described earlier with Reagan, who, as you know, I worked with all throughout his 8 years as president. One, we could give the Ukrainians ship-killing missiles, which would drive the Russian fleet away from the Ukrainian coast. Two, we could give the Ukrainians cruise missiles and surface-to-surface missiles and make a clear statement. If the Russians are going to bomb civilians, we have every right to bomb, have the Ukrainians have the equipment to bomb airfields, missile sites, missile storages. That would change the game almost overnight.